I'm Chris.
I'm Sandy.
And this is Parenting Autism.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 89 of the Parenting Autism podcast. We're glad you could join us today. And if you could see us, you would see that Chris has his left foot propped up on the table with our microphones while we're doing this podcast today because he had foot surgery. How you doing, honey?
Fantabulous.
Fabulous. So as we've been prepping to record this podcast, I will say that we had the giggles because
of Sandy's poor note-taking skills.
Yes, because today we're going to be talking
poor show preparation. Poor me. I've been here with my foot propped up on this table for the past half an hour while Sandy runs around trying to get herself together.
Well, some of that is true. I don't think it was a full 30 minutes. But we're here for you, the listeners.
We're here.
Because we want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And we wanted to talk about our visit to see Bryce's newest autism doctor, which is also called a MAPS doctor and also called a DAN doctor, a functional medicine doctor.
It's a doctor who specializes in autism.
And we've talked before. We took Bryce last fall to see a different doctor who got us on a great start. Mm-hmm. But we had mentioned in a recent episode that we were going to make a change. So we were able to go and see this new doctor. And I thought she was fabulous.
Amazing.
I believe that she's what we need to take us through the next part of our journey. Mm-hmm. I like her bedside manner better, I should say. I felt like she talked at a slower pace, which maybe was better for me. And I felt like we weren't rushed at all and that she really gave us her time and she wasn't just moving on to the next person.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that was really important for me. So we wanted to talk a little more today about our visit with the new doctor. And I will tell you that I tried to take notes during the session, but my note-taking at that speed is not very well. I abbreviated a lot of words, and
we wrote down...
I was trying to, take all the notes of what her new recommendations were for Bryce, what that meant. She actually was phenomenal at reading his blood test results in a way that we've never had them explained to us before.
Yeah.
I was telling my mom, I felt like we were in a science class.
Well, it is like a science class.
It is. It was like chemistry class.
And I've said this before. All doctors are not created equal in the autism world.
True.
You're most likely the pediatrician that you see, or the GI doctor that you see, or the neurologist that you see, are just not well educated about autism. We recently ran into a few med students that were getting ready to graduate.
Right.
And I said, oh, interesting. I said,
For
pediatrics. And I said, how much did they go over in your coursework about autism? And they said, oh, they really just brushed the surface with it. They told us the modalities. Is that a word that they use? I don't know. But basically, it was an overview of autism symptoms, and that was about it. They said if you wanted to go deeper into autism when you're in med school, you'd have to take a special path. Right,
it's like if you choose to specialize in something.
Yes.
You would have to choose to do that.
What do you call it when they're behind, kids that are behind?
Delayed development?
Delayed development. You would have to take those courses and that course path to better understand what autism is. And even still, the amount of research that these doctors who specialize in autism is really off the chart. And if you go and see one of these people, you will get educated about how the human body works.
Yes.
And how autism affects what is going on in the body. And so I see time and time again, my son, he's got this terrible behavior, or, the therapies aren't working, or,
You see that where?
In these autism groups, and I try to answer questions when I see those types of things. And I would say 90% of the time, that person has not been to a doctor who specializes in autism.
And I understand that, because it's not a convenient thing to do, and it's not an inexpensive thing to do.
Well, plus it's not on the radar.
And
because
a lot of it's not on the radar.
Most families don't know that these doctors are out there ready and willing to help.
I think that's true, too.
And I believe the only reason that we even found out was from the TACA Facebook group that these doctors even existed, because they are spread out across the country, that most likely there's not going to be one in your town.
Right.
Unless you live near a large city, and sometimes not even in a large city. But I'm telling you, when you go to one of these doctors, they know their stuff. It's down to the molecular level.
Yes.
Of how all this stuff works. And it's really amazing. You get an education, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we left, you asked me what I thought, and it was, again, one of those situations where I was quiet for a while because I had to process a lot of information that we just took in.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing negative, just a lot of facts.
Yeah.
And a lot of, again, like you said, it was looking at the charts and showing this is the way the brain is created. If you're getting this and this and this, then that will result in XYZ. Mm-hmm. But if you're only getting A and B and you're missing C, well, then your brain takes a different path. And then that's going to create, M, N, O. I don't know, just all these other letters, but all these different things. And it's really true. If things are running smooth, then everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if something is off the mark and something is missing and your body is not naturally producing something that it's supposed to be producing,
mm-hmm.
then it creates a whole different path for your brain to process information and to
nutrients.
Process nutrients.
Yep.
And that's why we have so many supplements. That's why it's an ever-changing game for Bryce.
It's the whole object.
And every child is different. I want to say that too. Because every
child
brain is different.
Every child will respond different.
Right.
So the whole object of seeing a doctor who specializes in autism is to get the body functioning the way it was intended by God.
Right.
So once you get the neural pathways connected, the gut working the way it's supposed to, things start to happen in the body that were supposed to happen all along. And all of a sudden, therapies become more effective.
Right.
You start getting more eye contact, more language. And you're laughing because
I'm laughing because Bryce's eye contact with you last night was kind of comical.
It was comical.
He was getting literally down and in your face to stare boldly into your eyes to make sure you were listening.
He really
to
wanted
him.
me to be listening to him.
Yes.
So, but that's like the base of your pyramid. You want that base to be working before you build on it with all of these therapies and such to make them to be most effective.
And we've kind of mentioned that before, because before we started this pathway in the fall, we did change Bryce's diet, which I'll reiterate in case somebody's newer to the podcast. But last summer, this time, it was the end of June, we went with really strict gluten-free, dairy-free. Those were the main two. We watch a lot of other things as well. We definitely try to do organic to avoid the chemicals and all the toxins and stuff that come with that. But having said that, the diet was the first step. We definitely saw improvements with that. We saw less self-injurious behaviors. We saw Bryce was able to process his information better. He was able to use his words better.
I would say within the first 30, correct me if I'm wrong, but 30 to 60 days, we saw dramatic improvement in behaviors.
Yeah, and that was just a diet change.
That was just the
not
diet
changing
change.
anything else.
Yep.
So then we went and saw Dr. A, and I'll just go with that. And then he looked at all the supplements that we were giving Bryce, and he made some revisions and he made some additions.
Yep.
And we followed that course. And then we started seeing more improvements.
Language.
And it was like what you said. Bryce was understanding things better. His mind was more clear because of the diet changes and the supplement changes and the things we were doing. And so he was getting more out of his therapies. We could tell.
Yeah.
I mean, and his therapist could tell. And Bryce was letting us know. And it was really, really good and all positive. And we went on that. We were on an incline for a while. It was really good. And then, I don't know, it was a few months ago, everything kind of plateaued. And it even almost regressed. And we're like, wow, okay, something's changing here, but we couldn't pinpoint what it was. Did we get a little sloppy with the diet? Not much.
Right.
But maybe a little. So we're like, oop, okay.
We were making exceptions.
We would make special occasions here and there.
Because we were out of town a lot. And when you're out of town, it's difficult.
It's more challenging.
To always get gluten-free, dairy-free. But
For sure. But we tightened that back up and made sure he was getting all his supplements and stuff. I don't think we were still kind of like, it's not like it was. That's okay. These things are going to happen. But we knew we'd be going to see Dr. B. And so that was on the planner. And so when she looked at everything, she pretty much stayed with the same things for the most part. But one thing was you had added a probiotic that Dr. A did not add to the plan.
So the first doctor
that
we saw, because Bryce, he's had trouble with his bowel movements. He's been constipated.
Which was a top goal going to Dr. A was to get his bowels moving
first
better.
Doctor. We'll just say the first doctor.
You say first, I'll say Dr. A.
Okay, Dr. A first. So he recommended a probiotic that we actually picked up at his office, I believe, and we came home with. And the name of it escapes me. He said, go ahead and try this and see if that improves his bowels. And if that doesn't, then I want you to go to this probiotic called VSL. He said it's a super powerful and start slow. So first probiotic really didn't make a difference in his bowel movements. And the first doctor was more concerned about how many billions of different probiotic bacteria were in the capsule or whatever, how many billions there were. So we switched to VSL, and it was a powder. We would mix it in. You have to keep it refrigerated. And I couldn't believe it. That one really wasn't making much difference either. So I kind of went back to the drawing board myself because that didn't work. And I remembered there was a specific strain that studies showed helped with autism. And I didn't know if it would help his bowel movements, but it showed to help improve speech and things like that, a certain strain of probiotic. So I researched probiotics with that strain in it, and I found one, and we started it, and lo and behold, his bowel movements improved. Yeah. And so I was very happy about that. But what I didn't realize was that on his stool test that we had done, there was streptococcus showed up in his stool sample, which is a type of bacteria, or and so this particular probiotic had that strain in it. So in other words, we were kind of feeding that bad strain there while we were giving him the good strain, because it had both in it.
Right.
And the second doctor pointed that out. She's like, "Oh, we don't want to feed that bad stuff with this." And I said, "Okay." So she gave us a different probiotic. It's called Spore or something. And that has helped us get more consistent with his bowel movements. And since we've seen doctor number 2, we have had gains. And we've introduced glutathione and vitamin B12 shots.
Which we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so we have a short list of supplements that she wanted us to introduce, and she's like, you want to wait in between supplements because you want to know if you're going to see a difference or not. And some, each kid is different. Some supplements take longer to see differences and things like that. But I'd say between the glutathione and the B12 shots, we have seen Bryce kick up a notch.
We're back on an incline.
With language. And so we're very thankful for that. We have about 3 more things to add to his regimen that will help him in other areas. But we're on the right track, and she was super nice, and I'll let you take it from there.
No, that was fine. I mean, I'm just kind of skimming through my chicken scratch here.
Yeah.
The notes that are legible to me. But yeah, I was going to point out that about the strep, because we didn't know that. And my point was going to be, there were 2 things when we left there that I felt, well, maybe I'll say 3 things. 3 things by the time we left there that I felt made it really worth the price of admission. And it was an expensive admission, but definitely worthwhile. One was that she identified that we were feeding the strep through that probiotic. We would have never thought to look for that. And I know I say we loosely because I know I wouldn't have, because I don't do all the research, and I really lean on you to that, for that.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one at home.
Yeah, you do. Yes. Doogie Howser. So anyway, I look to you for those kind of things, and you would not have known that you were feeding that. So for her to in moments look at that and go, oh no, we definitely need to change that.
But Dr. 1 did not point out strep.
No.
In the results at all.
No.
He wasn't concerned about that.
This is the first we heard of it, and that's what I'm saying.
And I knew that was in the results, but when you get the results back from the stool sample, it's not in jargon that you and I can understand.
Correct.
So
we're looking for the interpretation, which was what
one of the reasons
Dr.
why
B gave us.
Yeah, exactly.
So I felt like she gave us those answers right away, which was great. And I know that strep can also trigger pandas, especially in children that are autistic. So I'm like, if we're dodging that bullet, man, I don't even want to go into that. But I have watched a fellow mom who is going through that with her son, and it's like, that was worth price of admission 1. I would say the second price of admission would be what I wanted to say earlier, but I forgot. But I'll go to C, because that one I remember. And that would be the oxygen chamber, and we will talk about that in depth. There was another thing that I thought was really good. It'll come to me. Okay. But having said all that, maybe as I read my notes. So that was the one thing with the strep thing. I felt like she did read all the tests really well.
I'll go into the hyperbaric chamber if you want.
Yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'll kind of skim through here.
So Dr. 1 suggested that we do the hyperbaric chamber with Bryce because of his history with his brain bleed, and he felt that it would benefit him greatly because of the brain tissue that's was damaged when he had a stroke when he was a baby. And so it's expensive. We looked into it at that time, but when you see one of these doctors, it's like it takes time to implement the supplements and routine. So we hadn't gotten to the hyperbaric chamber yet. We didn't really research it. He just told us that we would need about 20 dives, they call it, because when you go under pressure, they call it a dive, and you would need about 20 to know if you're seeing improvement or not, if it's working or not. So when we got to Dr. 2 or Dr. B, she said she agreed, and I hadn't even brought it up. We hadn't talked about what Dr. A said.
Right.
And she said that I think he would benefit greatly from hyperbaric chamber, a soft chamber, low pressure, and she said that if you don't have a place near you, you can rent one and you can sleep in the thing. You know, generally, I think they go in for an hour or 2 hours or whatever normally. But she said if you're renting it, just get it. You know, you can sleep in it and get that benefit of the pure oxygen. And she said what that'll do is there's brain cells that are around the stroke area where there's dead cells and there's cells that are dormant or inactive. And she said this would help activate the cells that are around the stroke area to help the brain. And it would help with autism, his autism also. So two birds with one stone there. And that's one of the things she points out when she sees you. She's like, I'm always looking for something that will help in multiple ways. If I give you some type of supplement or suggest a treatment, I'm always looking for that treatment to help in multiple ways. And so she suggested that. She had a chamber in her office, and she offers 2 free dives, they call it. So you and Bryce went in to the chamber while I continued to talk to her, and you can share your experience. Yeah,
so with the chamber, and by the way, I did remember my other one. It had to do with his seizures, so just remember that. So they have to prepare the air, the oxygen to come in. So Bryce and I went in, and it was comfortably large enough for he and I to both be in there. It's even set up where they got a pillow on each end. So if he wanted to lay one way, I could lay the other way, but he wanted to snuggle with me, which was perfectly fine. And so we had plenty of space for us to lay side by side. He took his iPad or Switch, one of those in there with him. I just kind of closed my eyes and rested for an hour. It was kind of nice. And the time went by quickly. I don't get claustrophobic. So I suppose if you have issues with claustrophobia, it really might be an issue.
Did it have windows?
I want to say no.
Okay, usually they have a window.
Maybe to the right.
Okay.
But you still feel enclosed.
You couldn't see anybody outside?
Maybe I did. Okay. Yeah, because you did. You waved at us.
Oh, that's right. I took a picture.
You did.
I think. Yep.
They're not big windows. So again, if you're claustrophobic, it could affect you because you are enclosed and you can't just get right out. She said, if you need to get out, you need to, knock or do whatever, because there were things to do to get us out.
Oh, okay.
So, some people have that issue. But for me, it's not a problem. And for Bryce, more importantly, it was not a problem. And that's really what we wanted to test. Like, how would he do going in there? Would he be okay with going in there and being enclosed? Would that freak him out? No, none of that. He was 100% fine. And we were in there, I think, an hour. Again, there's 15 minutes to prep it, and then there's 15 minutes to undo before we could get out. But it was a good experience.
Okay, good.
As far as that goes.
And she showed us scans of brains before and after hyperbaric chamber treatment, and it showed activity with colors on the screen. And there was one case where she showed us the brain was mostly gray and white with little to no color. And then after the treatment, I think she said it was 6 months after the treatment.
Yes.
She showed us the after, and it was all reds and blues and yellows and oranges, and red, I think, was white was the most activity. And then red was next. And so it was a big difference, in other words. And she said the nice thing about that is that you keep that. So you don't have to continue using the chamber to keep that amount of activity. Once you get the benefit from it, it continues.
Because that specific example that she showed us, he had done a few treatments, only a few, right? And then 6 months later, they showed the comparison, and it had retained most of it. So yeah, that was encouraging.
I don't know how many treatments it was.
Okay.
So if you think it was a few, it could have been a few, but
maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do think that her point was that with
lasting effects.
With 6 months in between, it lasted. Yeah.
6 months after the treatment stopped.
Yeah.
they redid the scan.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's something that we're definitely looking into praying about. It takes a lot of prayer for that too. It's a big decision, but we're looking into it. And I know that you had a good conversation with someone this week that is in a different state with a chamber, but it may be one of those things that we end up taking a road trip and renting it for a month. So we'll see. I told you it'll all work out when it's supposed to, but at least we know that there are other things that we can try for Bryce. And I think on this journey as a parent, you always want to feel like there's something else out there that you can try and have hope. Okay. Yes, your hand's up.
I'm going to move my foot. So to explain a little bit about my foot, I guess people are probably curious. And this is where doctors come in again. It's I've been in a lot of pain with my feet for about 30 years, and I've seen so many podiatrists, I probably lost count. And they all diagnosed me with plantar fasciitis. You got plantar fasciitis. Here, buy my insert for your shoes. Wear this splint. Do these stretches. Take these injections, blah, 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 and you'll feel better. Well, after about a half a dozen times of that, you start to wonder, is this really what it is? So I dove into anatomy books. I watched videos of people dissecting cadavers' feet. I don't like to look at that kind of stuff because it makes my stomach, queasy. But I had to, because I knew that it was not plantar fasciitis. And I discovered the nerve where this was coming from. And I finally found a surgeon that agreed with me, and he had a multi approach to this pain, multi-faceted approach, or whatever you want to call it. And so I had the surgery about a week ago. So they cut my calf, they cut my ankle, and then under my foot. So they did procedures in 3 different spots to relieve the pressure on this nerve in my one foot. And if this works, I'm doing the other foot. So, I'm getting too old for this kind of thing, but it's been painful for a long time. And, it just goes to show you there's doctors that'll put a stamp on what it is. And then there's other doctors that'll help you to get to the bottom of what it is, really.
It's true. It's true. Different doctors. Yeah. I'm going through my own health issues and you're learning too. I'm learning too. It's been medical central at our house, to say the least. Yeah. But you know what? That's part of self-care. And I'll get back to Dr. B and Bryce here in a minute. But, it's important as parents that we take care of ourselves if we want to be able to be in the best condition to take care of our child and our children as well. And so, I'm very grateful that you were able to do this for yourself. And I'm still seeking answers for what I'm experiencing, but at least we're taking care of ourselves and not just putting our health on the side burner. Mm-hmm. And I think that was our 2022 mission is let's get ourselves healthy. And that's what we've been working on. Yeah. And Bryce is part of that as well. Yeah. So he's in a good place, which is great.
It's been an expensive year.
It has been. I'm working on that medical spreadsheet today, as a matter of fact. We might get a write-off this year, so that tells you.
I told my last podiatrist before I found a surgeon, I said, listen, if I could do the surgery myself, I know where the nerve is. I'll do it myself, but I can't. It's like, I know what it is. Oh, but anyway.
Well, hopefully, prayerfully, when you get all of that off and you step on your foot for the first time, you will not feel that pain in that nerve anymore. So that's what we're hoping and praying for. And I'm sure we'll update that on the podcast as well. Continuing with Dr. B here before we run out of time, because I know your foot's on a limit. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I felt was worth the price of admission, and probably more important than the other 2 things, was she is taking a very proactive approach to preventing Bryce from having seizures as he ages and as his brain matures to go into puberty.
because it's common for kids with autism who don't show seizures early on to develop them later.
Yes. And then Bryce is already very, he's very sensitive to all of this because he's had seizures and because he has that activity that's still around that area of his brain. So she is taking the approach, and supplements that she's recommending and things that she's doing is to help prevent seizures. And so that I'm very grateful for. And that was really an affirmation for me, that making the change from Dr. A to Dr. B at this point of the journey was the right thing to do. Bryce is going to be 9 in a few weeks. And, before we know it, his brain will be going into that transition. So we'll be a year or two ahead of that process, which will be a good thing, I think, but it's something that I've always been aware of and something that I know we have to continue to watch, but I love, love, love that she's taken a proactive approach to that.
I really felt comfortable with her and everything that she was saying. From all the research that I've done, it just seemed to be a good match.
It is. And then you spoke to someone earlier this week when you were calling about the chamber, and he was familiar with this doctor and rave reviews and endorsements as well. So it's just like you just when you know, and it was a good thing. The last thing I really want to talk about with this specifically is the methyl B12 shots, because it's kind of
funny.
It's kind of funny. So we've talked about all this chemical chemistry type of jargon, but now we're talking about B12 shots. So if you have listened to our podcast at all, you will know that Bryce has a major, major, major fear of needles and anything medical related, because 2 years ago he had an infection in his leg. It was a horrific experience when he had to get it cut out. It wasn't at a hospital, it was at a walk-in clinic.
Basically,
for children. It was bad.
They tried to give him anesthesia locally, and it didn't work, and he proceeded to cut the whatever
whatever it was, the abscess.
It was very traumatic for everybody.
It was traumatic for everybody, and Bryce has not forgotten that. So just the thought of a needle freaks him out.
And so blood work that we've done since then has been, how many people do we need to hold him to get the needle? So what we found out through experience is sometimes in your area there might be a phlebotomist that will come to your home and take blood. And this has been a blessing for us. I think the first one was $50, but now it's $80 because of inflation or whatever. Yeah. But you have to pay out of pocket. They come to your home. You're in your comfort setting. And Bryce was very apprehensive the first time because, again, it was a needle. And then Mr. Victor said, and this is what clicked with Bryce, is if you don't stay still, we're going to have to do it all over again. So Bryce, something clicked in his brain. He's like, okay, I'm going to sit still. And he put the needle in, got the blood out, and there was no drama. I mean, it was really pretty smooth.
Bryce is brave about it. He wants to cry, but he keeps the tears in, and he trusts, which is important, and we get it done.
And we just had Mr. Victor here about a week or two ago for round 2, and it went even smoother.
Yes.
So all you moms and dads out there, instead of going to, the clinic that looks like a hospital, you don't have to do that. You can hire somebody to come to your house if that's available in your area.
Yeah. And if what we did the time before we switched to the home method was we took Bryce to a blood draw place that was inside of Walgreens. So then I thought, well, now he's never going to want to go in Walgreens or CVS again. So we just had to mix it up, to get something where it was safe and comfortable for him.
And those types of places, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Those people are behind a secret door.
Yeah.
You go through the secret door and then you see what all's going on in there. Other kids crying.
Yeah.
And
it was not good.
It's just for somebody that's that age, I couldn't imagine the anxiety.
Right. And Bryce definitely has anxiety.
Yeah.
So we know Bryce has anxiety. We know he doesn't like needles. And this B12 requires shots because it's definitely more effective to take it as a shot right into your bloodstream than through pill form or powder. So we're like, how are we going to do this? So she has done that for her daughter, being the doctor. So she said, some parents will give it to them while they're sleeping. Some parents, she goes, like in our case, our daughter thought it was funny because we all needed to take the shots. So, she would get to say who got to go first, and she'd always want to go last and that sort of thing because it was a family activity. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. So you and I said, we'll try the sleep thing, mm-hmm. Because he's a good sleeper. He's normally a very deep sleeper. So the first time we're going to attempt it, you just have to see the scene here. All right, so it's late at night. Bryce has fallen asleep, and so
I was going to give it to him.
You were going to give it to him.
And so let's do a little backstory. So the needle is very short. I think it's the same needle that they use for insulin shots. So it's very small. So it's not like a needle that they do for a blood draw. It's different. It's very small.
Correct.
So I had the syringe. Sandy had the flashlight.
Yes, I had my little flashlight and the alcohol swab. So I had it prepped, and we were doing it in his upper torso.
so I went to give it to him.
Upper butt cheek, I should say.
Yeah, and...
Well, you just barely touched his skin, and he flinched.
Well, what happened was, I went to put it in, and he felt it. He flinched, and I pressed
that was the second time. The first time was just you barely touched it.
Oh, okay.
And then the second time...
I went to put it in, and he moved, and I pushed the plunger down. Well, the liquid is red, and Sandy's like, oh my goodness, he's bleeding. I'm like, no, he's not bleeding. Looked like something out of a movie scene. And
I thought blood was pouring I thought you
sleeping,
burst a vein in him or something.
So he's sleeping, and I'm like, oh, okay, all
You're
right.
Like, no, that's the B12. I'm like, oh, okay. So now that was the second time. So we cleaned that up. We had to clean that up. And he's sleeping through all of this, right? He did not awaken, nothing. So we're like waiting to get busted. I'm like, oh my gosh, if he wakes up and sees us doing this to him, he's going to be so mad at us, and we're going to lose trust. So you're like, well, we have to get it in him, because I had already kind of stalled several nights, because I'm like, how is this going to happen? So you're like, I said, I don't think I can put myself through this a third time tonight. And you're like, well, we have to get it done. I'm like, okay, we'll do it. I'm like, just like that. Okay, we'll do it. You're like, we will? I'm like, yes. Okay, I'll try it this time. You're like, okay. So I had the idea that this time I would first take my fingernail, which I have long nails. And so I kind of just pressed it into his butt to see if he flinched, and he didn't. So then I took my thumb and my pointer finger, and I pinched him just a little bit to see if he would flinch, and he didn't. So I thought, okay, he must be in a good enough sleep now. Let me try it. So you held the flashlight, we swabbed him, and then I got it right in there, no problem, and we were done.
Yep.
We're like, whew, okay, we get that one.
And that happened 2 or 3 times, right?
And you have to do it every other night. So at least we had one more night to recover. And then we had to do it again, and it went well, nights 2, and then the third time.
So then we go to do it again, and I don't know, we must have spent an hour after he fell asleep trying to give him the shot.
He just kept moving.
Flinching.
And moving. Yeah.
Like he was awake or something. I'm like,
I said he subconsciously knew we were doing something to him.
I think he did. I think he did. So then you're like, we got to give it to him while he's awake. I'm like, there's no way he's going to go for that. How is he going to go for that?
So I said, well, she said that they did it as a family. And I said, I'll take one for the team. I'll let him give me the shot.
Oh, my goodness.
And if he sees that he's in control and he's doing it first, then maybe he'll be open to us doing it to him.
I'm like, there's no way.
You said this isn't going to work. I'm like, well, let's try it. And then also we talked about numbing it a little bit.
Well,
like with ice.
The whole thing was, and the reward would be for him to be able to sleep in our bed. That was his reward.
Well, we kind of didn't discuss that because you kind of came up with that on your own. But that did work.
Before we gave you the shot or after?
After.
Oh, yeah, because we had to still convince him.
Right. Yeah. So when he was giving me the shot, there was like, we did not say, if you give Mommy a shot, then you get a shot. nope. It was just, you're going to give me a shot. I didn't even tell him he needed one. I said, can you help me? I have to get a shot. What? You have to get a needle? Yeah, I need to get a needle. Why? What's wrong, Mommy? I said, well, it's going to help me. You know, it'll help my brain. So that's what we started playing on, because Bryce likes to take things that he knows will help him. I said, it'll help my brain. It'll just help me do lots of things better, and it'll make me stronger. Will you give it to me? So he was like kind of nervous and excited, but then it was like, okay, Mommy. And so then let me see it. Okay. So we showed, I thought, oh yeah, that's a very little needle. I don't even think I'll feel it, but let's put ice on my butt first. And of course we're saying the word butt several times. So he thought that was funny. So we put some ice on my butt cheek, and then we put the alcohol thing, and then you helped him to put it in, and you were showing him what to do. And so he put it in me. I honestly didn't feel it.
He pressed it.
Yeah, he pressed it. And he put it all in, and I did not feel it. And I said, "Oh, you're all done." I didn't feel it, which I didn't. And I was going to be really honest with him about it. So, of course, I have a lot more fat on my butt than he does, but still, I didn't feel anything. So I was like, "Okay, this is good." So I gave it a few minutes, and then I said, "Wow, I think this is really helping my brain. I can feel it." Bryce, do you think you want to get one to maybe help your brain too? Give me a needle? Oh, I don't think so. Well, you don't have to. I mean, I was just thinking, because, you told me sometimes it's hard for you to find your words, and, maybe that would help you. So we continued to not put any pressure at all. It was totally optional. And so Chris left his phone on. It's just a no-no in the podcast room.
So sorry.
It's okay. So anyway, so we said to him, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. It'll just help you. We're trying to explain ways, because she did say that specifically this shot will help with his speech. She goes, if you want words and language, you just start giving him these shots and you are going to have them. And it also produces, let me if I say it right, glutathione.
Yeah, glutathione.
Glutathione to detoxify his body.
Whoa. We are getting a
crazy
major
things going
power
on.
surge going on.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to wrap this up.
I'm not sure we're still recording, but we'll keep going.
Oh, no. All right. Well, we're going to try. So anyway, we eventually convinced him, because that's when you offered up, do you want to sleep in Mommy and Daddy's bed tonight as a special treat? Yeah. Okay. Well, if you get the shot, then you can do that. And it didn't take too much persuasion. He was a little nervous about it. But then as we were doing that, I started to feel it burn. And so I said to you, I'm concerned about it burning me. So I remember they said, they being the Dr. B and the pharmacist, that you should be careful as to where you order your B12 from, which I guess I should say that if we're sharing this, because different labs make it in different ways, and it has been known to burn.
There's a preservative that they put in there that burns.
Yeah. And so it can, obviously, I said, well, if Bryce feels burning, he's going to be out in the first round, and then he's not going to want to do it anymore. And so we ordered it from the lab that she recommended. I will say that the burning probably lasted, I don't know, more than 2 to 3 minutes tops. It wasn't very long.
That's a long time when you're sitting there burning.
It is, but I could feel it. So I did tell Bryce that, because I wanted to be very honest about my entire experience.
So we weren't sure if that was from the alcohol swab, because alcohol can burn.
But it was a delayed, and it was internal.
Okay,
so I'm pretty sure it was from the B12.
It was from the B12. So.
And so I could feel it. It was like heat inside my cheek. So that's what I was telling him, was like trying to describe to him. I said, no, it didn't hurt going in. I didn't feel anything at all. I said, but a little bit later, I did feel like it was kind of like heat. And you said he said like lava, because that's like in his game. Yeah, kind of like lava, but just not very long at all. So we prepped him for all of that. And I said, if you start to feel it
I don't think
burn
we said
a little
lava.
bit. Did he not say that?
I said, don't say lava. Because you tell him lava.
He might think it's too
way.
hot.
Yeah, we used a different word.
Maybe somehow he described it, but he was okay with it. And I told him if he started to feel it, then, I would dance with him or something to take his mind off of it. But it really worked out well. And so he let us do it. He did. He let us put the needle in there. And then afterwards, he was like, okay. And he was like all giggly, nervous.
We're like, did you feel it?
No.
He said, I just felt
Like a tap.
A tap.
Boop. That was it.
And we're like, yes.
And then afterwards, I think he felt like a little bit of what I was saying with that burn, but and I started tickling him. And I think it lasted like 15, 20 seconds. We tickled him and he was done.
He didn't even mention it.
No. And then the next morning, that was the first thing he mentioned to me when we got up was something about the needle, but he was okay with it. I said, and how does your brain feel? Does it feel better? Oh, yes. I'm like, okay, great. So the next day we hyped it up and said, wow, how were your words today? Did you feel like you could talk better today? Oh, yes. Oh, okay, good. How was your words? Great. Okay, good. So we just try to reinforce that was a positive thing for him. So he goes, oh, maybe I'll get another one another time. We're like, yeah, well, when would you like to have
Saturday?
that? And he says,
Saturday.
I was thinking in a week.
About a week.
And then you go, a week? Well, I was thinking like Saturday. He goes, oh, I don't know.
No,
maybe like a month.
Yeah, maybe a month.
Like maybe we should have stuck with a week. So anyway, that's tonight. We'll see how it goes for the next round. But
so we got to wrap.
Lots of good things here.
My foot is
I'm sorry, baby.
needs to be repositioned out of here.
All right. Am I allowed to share one funny story? Can your foot handle one funny story to make them laugh?
Less than 2 minutes, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Less than
then
2 minutes.
I'm going to leave with or without you.
Sounds good.
Okay, go.
All right, so since we were talking about butts, I'm going to talk about this one. So you've been saying to Bryce, when you have to pee, you need to aim in the toilet. Hit it in the circle, in the water. Aim for the water. All right? Because we're tired of cleaning this up. He says to you.
Well, I've been making him clean it up too, but it really hasn't made a difference.
That didn't really make a difference. Yeah. So you said to him, Bryce, because he's like, Daddy, I got to go pee. Okay, aim for the water.
Make sure it goes into the water.
Make sure it goes into the water and pay attention. He goes, Daddy, I try to get it into the water, but sometimes my winky is just out of control.
It gets out of control.
All right, so anyway. We found it funny. The things that come out of him, I make these notes. Yes. Thanks for joining us. I'm wrapping up Rapid Fire. Have a great week. We'll be back again as soon as Chris's foot will let us.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.